The bullet grazed Max Sullivan's shoulder at 11:47 p.m., exactly 13 seconds after he realized the three maintenance workers weren't here to fix anything. His hand moved before conscious thought could catch up muscle memory from 12 years Delta Force. The guard station desk became cover. Fingers found the concealed Glock 19 taped underneath against company policy, but old habits died hard. The weapon was cold in his palm, familiar right in a way nothing had felt right in 5 years. He hadn't fired one since Rebecca's funeral. Not since he'd promised Sophie he was done with that life. Tonight, that promise died. The lead mercenary's voice crackled through the radio Mac had stripped from the first body. Static, then words that turned his blood to ice. Sullivan's contained, proceed with phase 2, the Morgan girls in residential wing 3rd floor. A pause, cruel amusement threading through the transmission. And Sullivan, your daughter Sophie is home alone right now. Apartment 7B, Cherry Street. Severe asthma, right? Hope she remembered her inhaler. Mac's heart stopped. Sophie, 8 years old, alone. Her emergency inhaler still on the kitchen counter, because she'd forgotten it again this morning when he dropped her at school running late, both of them laughing about burnt toast and mismatched socks. The tactical part of his brain calculated faster than panic could set in. 3 hostels in lobby, unknown number, heading for Lily Morgan. 15 minutes drive to his apartment. Sophie's nebulizer treatment takes 12 minutes. A voice from behind, sharp with authority and confusion. Victoria Morgan stood in her office doorway in business, casual laptop, bag in hand, working late again like she did every Tuesday. Her eyes locked on Mac blood-streaked security uniform weapon, trained on Shadow's body, coiled like a snake about to strike. Not the bored night guard who said yes, ma'am, and checked ID badges without meeting anyone's eyes. Someone else entirely. Mac's voice came out flat, emotionless, the command tone he'd sworn he'd never use again. Ma'am, I need you to step back inside and lock the door. Her hand gripped the doorframe tighter. What's happening? Now, ma'am. The authority in those 2 words made her move. 10 years running a defense contractor, Victoria Morgan gave orders, didn't take them. But something in this security guard's bearing and way he held that weapon, the tactical assessment in his glance, screamed operator. She retreated 1 step, then stopped. My daughter, Lily. She's 3rd floor residential room 312, I know. Mac was already moving clearing angles with practiced efficiency. They know too. The mercenary came around the corner, fast professional weapon up, center mass ready. Mac shot him in the shoulder before the man's finger touched trigger. 1 round. Precise. Disabling, not killing. The weapon clattered to marble floor with a sound like breaking teeth. 2 seconds. Second mercenary appeared from stairwell. Mac's kick broke the man's knee elbow. Strike crushed his trachea, weapon stripped and secured before the body hit ground. Blood on white marble spreading like spilled wine. 4 seconds total. Victoria stared, laptop bag slipping from her shoulder, falling to the floor with a thud. Neither of them heard. Who the hell are you? Mac pulled the fire alarm. Sirens wailing, sprinklers activating, chaos beginning. Water rained down from ceiling fixtures, turning everything into a confusion of sound and motion and panic. Exactly what he needed. His voice cut through it all, quiet but absolute. Someone who should have stayed retired, ma'am. He checked his watch, 11:48 p.m. Sophie's last breathing treatment was at 8 p.m. She was due for another and his phone buzzed. Unknown number, he answered, already knowing, already calculating how many people were about to die tonight. The voice came through, distorted, mechanical, but the smugness underneath was pure human arrogance. Hello, soldier. I believe we have something you want. Actually, 2 somethings. Sweet little Sophie and young Miss Lily. Let's talk about Sentinel, shall we? The screen in Mac's mind went dark. 12 hours earlier, the Porsche's window slid down at Morgan Tech's main gate. Richard Blackwell, executive vice president of Titan Corp., flashed an investor badge without looking at Mac, without seeing him at all. Mac's clipboard was ready, pen poised over the visitor log. Name for the log, sir. Blackwell finally glanced at him, dismissed him instantly. Middle-aged security guard, cheap uniform, probably ex-military who couldn't cut it. The kind of man Blackwell walked past every day without seeing, without thinking about, without remembering. The tone said everything about how Blackwell saw the world. Richard Blackwell, Titan Corp., I'm expected. Mac typed slowly, deliberately watching Blackwell's irritation build like pressure in a sealed container. Small power, but power nonetheless. Investor conference, third floor. Have a good day, sir. Blackwell drove off without acknowledgement, without thanks, without any indication he had registered Mac as a human being worthy of basic courtesy. Mac watched the Porsche disappear around the building's curve, something off about this visit tickling his instincts. Titan Corp was Morgan Tech's primary competitor, and Blackwell had been here 3 times in the 2 weeks, always after hours, always alone, always wearing that same expression of barely concealed anticipation. Old training whispered in the back of his skull pattern means purpose, purpose means threat. But that wasn't his job anymore. His job was checking IDs and writing reports nobody read and collecting paychecks that barely covered rent and Sophie's medications. At the apartment that evening, Sophie sat at their small kitchen table, nebulizer mask over her face, breathing deep as medication mist filled her lungs. The machine's rhythmic hiss, click was the soundtrack of Mac's life for 8 years, since the day the doctors confirmed what Rebecca had already suspected. Shadow padded into the kitchen, 90 pounds of German Shepherd, moving with the deliberate grace of a king who'd cleared compounds in Kandahar and guarded bases in hostile territory. The dog was 5 years old, 35 in human years, but still carried himself like the military working dog Jake Torres had delivered 3 years ago, with simple instructions: he's done his duty, now he protects yours. The shepherd positioned himself between Sophie and the apartment door, old training never fully retiring. His ears swiveled independently, tracking sounds. Civilians missed footsteps in hallway elevator mechanisms, the particular rhythm of threats versus neighbors. Sophie's voice came muffled through the mask, 8 years old, but already understanding poverty's mathematics. Daddy, can we afford the new inhaler? The prescription on the counter, $340. His bank account, $187. Mac knelt beside her, cupping her small face in his hands, memorizing the way Rebecca's eyes looked out from Sophie's features. Don't worry about that, baby girl. Daddy's got it handled. The lie tasted like copper on his tongue. Sophie reached out with her free hand, fingers tangling in Shadow's thick fur. The dog leaned into her touch, providing comfort and warmth. Shadow knows when I can't breathe good. He wakes up Daddy before I even need my inhaler. Max scratched behind the dog's ears, felt the tension coiled in muscle that never fully relaxed. Shadow's smarter than both of us combined, baby girl. The dog's dark eyes tracked Mac's movements with assessment that transcended animal instinct. This was training discipline, purpose that retirement couldn't erase. Sophie's eyes, gray-green wise beyond years, didn't believe his earlier reassurance about money. Mrs. Rodriguez at school said her dad works 3 jobs. Maybe you could, 1 job's enough. He kept his voice gentle, kept the desperation buried where she couldn't see it. You let me worry about money. You worry about breathing good and doing your math homework. Deal. Deal. She smiled, then the smile faded into something more serious. Dad, do you miss being a soldier? The question hit like a bullet to the vest, winding painful, leaving bruises nobody could see. Sometimes, sweetheart. Why'd you stop? The truth was complicated. Rebecca's crash, the investigation that found nothing, the suspicions he couldn't prove, the nightmares that wouldn't stop, the realization that Sophie needed a father more than the Army needed another operator who couldn't sleep without seeing blood on his hands. But Sophie was 8, and 8-year-olds deserve simpler truths. His answer came quiet, absolute. Because soldiers leave, daddies stay, and you need a daddy more than the Army needs another soldier. He kissed her forehead, then stood to prepare for work. As Mac headed for the door, Shadow's low whine carried question and concern equally. I know, boy. You stay here. Guard Sophie. Mac used the hand signal Jake had taught him, flat palm downward motion. Protection protocol. Shadow returned to Sophie's side, settling with the patience of a sentinel who understood his mission completely. What if people need help, like Mom helped people? Sophie asked from behind her mask. Rebecca had been a helicopter pilot, medevac, saving wounded soldiers until the day her helicopter fell from the sky over nothing. No enemy fire, no mechanical failure. The investigation could identify just gravity and bad luck, and questions Max still couldn't answer. Then someone else helps them. My job is helping you. But Sophie's words echoed as Mac drove to work that evening through streets he knew by heart, past buildings he'd memorized, toward a job that paid enough to keep them housed, but not enough to keep them comfortable. What if people need help? His shift started at 8 p.m. Quiet Tuesday skeleton crew, just how he liked it. Less people meant less conversation, meant less questions about who he used to be, about the scars on his forearms, about why his eyes never stopped scanning corners and exits and potential threats. At 9:30 p.m., Victoria Morgan's office light was still on. Third night this week. EO burning midnight oil, fighting some corporate battle Mac didn't understand and didn't need to understand. Her job was running a billion-dollar defense contractor. His job was making sure the doors stayed locked. At 10:15 p.m., he did his rounds building sweep check locks, test alarms. All clear, all quiet, all exactly like every other Tuesday night for the past 2 years. At 10:47 p.m. his radio crackled. Jerry from East Entrance, voice uncertain. Sullivan, we've got 3 maintenance workers at East Entrance. They're not on my schedule. Can you verify? Mac's phone buzzed simultaneously. Sophie's emergency app. Shadow had triggered the alert system Mac installed after the first asthma scare. 3 sharp barks in specific sequence detected by phone microphone, automatically signaling distress. Mac pulled up the apartment camera feed. Shadow stood rigid at the window, hackles raised, staring at something in the parking lot Mac couldn't see from this angle. The dog's posture screamed threat assessment, head low, ears forward, body coiled. But Sophie was asleep, breathing steady. No medical emergency. Shadow was reacting to external threat. Mac's tactical instincts crystallized. Shadow detected surveillance. Someone watching the apartment. Someone waiting. He switched camera angles, caught brief glimpse of dark sedan occupants barely visible. Professional surveillance, the kind that knew how to stay in blind spots. Mac's blood went cold. They weren't just hitting Morgan Tech. They were positioned on his daughter. His radio crackled again, Jerry's voice urgent now. Sullivan, these maintenance workers are insisting on entry. Should I? Mac's instincts screamed before his conscious mind caught up. I'll handle it personally. He found them at the service entrance, tactical gear barely concealed under maintenance coveralls, earpieces visible to anyone who knew what to look for, moving with synchronized precision no maintenance crew possessed. Their spacing was military. Their awareness was professional. Their eyes tracked him with the cold assessment of predators evaluating prey. Military operators, not corporate security, not rent-a-cops playing soldier. Threat. Mac's hand drifted toward his concealed weapon as his voice stayed casual, bored exactly what they'd expect from a minimum wage security guard. Evening, gentlemen. I'll need to see your work orders. The lead man smiled, and the smile was all predator. Sure thing, rent-a-cop. The work order was perfect. Too perfect. Corporate seal authorization code, supervisor signature. All the right boxes checked, all the right forms filled out. Fake, but excellent fake, the kind that cost money and required inside access to forge. Mac's finger tapped the radio button, emergency signal, silent, alerting Jerry that something was wrong. The lead man's eyes caught the movement. Professional eyes, trained eyes, eyes that had seen combat and knew what combat looked like. The mercenary's voice dropped all pretense. Mistake, friend. Mac's response came with the calm of a man who'd made this calculation 100 times before. Yeah, yours. Then everything went to hell at 11:47 p.m. and Mac's old life came roaring back like a freight train through his carefully constructed normal. Now standing in the ruins of that normal water, still raining from sprinklers, 2 bodies unconscious on the floor, 3rd body bleeding but stable, Mac looked at Victoria Morgan and saw her really seeing him for the first time. She emerged from her office, despite orders, phone in her hand, CEO instincts overriding common sense. I called 911. Mac grabbed her wrist, gentle but absolutely firm. Don't. They said they have your daughter and mine. Police arrive, they execute. Standard hostage protocol. Victoria stopped processing her business, mind clicking into crisis mode despite the fear Mac could see building in her eyes. You talk like... She stopped, really seeing him, seeing past the uniform to the operator underneath. What are you right now, ma'am? Mac was already pulling up building schematics on the guard station computer, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency across the keyboard. Your best chance. He pointed to the screen to the residential wing layout. Lily's in third floor. How many ways in? Victoria's voice steadied executive training taking over. Two staircases, one elevator fire escape on the east side. She paused, then something clicked. But Lily has a panic button necklace I gave you. If she presses it, building security gets alerted. They'll know we're coming. Mac nodded, filing that information away. Good girl, smart. He pulled his phone, dialed Jake Torres, the only person from his old life he'd stayed in contact with, the only person he trusted with what he was about to ask. Voicemail. Of course. Jake was probably asleep dreaming about something normal, something that didn't involve hostages and mercenaries and children in danger. Mac's message came fast, urgent, military precise. Torres, it's Mac. Colorado Morgan Tech. Hostage situation, 2 kids including Sophie. Need immediate extract full kit. Call back in 30 seconds or I'm going dark. 20 seconds later, his phone buzzed. Jake's voice came through, rough with sleep and sudden adrenaline. Jesus Christ, Mac. You said you were done. I lied. Mac was already moving toward the stairwell, weapon up, clearing corners. Sophie's at the apartment. Armed surveillance likely. Can you? Jake's response was immediate, no hesitation. The response of a brother who'd carried wounded through hell. 15 minutes out. I'll get her. She has asthma. Mac's voice cracked just for a second, just enough to show the fear he was keeping buried. Jake's voice steadied with professional calm. I know, hermano. Nebulizer in hall closet, blue inhaler in kitchen. I've got her. He paused. Shadow's still there, right? Yeah, camera shows him at Sophie's door. Won't let anyone near her. Good. I trained him for this protection protocols when you're away. He'll recognize me, but he won't let me take Sophie without your authorization signal. Jake paused. What's the override code? Mac recited the sequence he'd programmed into Shadow's training 3 years ago. Kilo 7 Victor, hand signal closed fist over heart, then open palm. Then he'll allow escort. Copy that. Mac, Shadow's buying you time. That sedan outside your building, dogs keeping them at distance. They won't risk approaching with military working dog visible in window. Mac felt fractional relief. Shadow was doing exactly what Jake had trained him for, creating defensive perimeter when primary guardian was absent. Get them both to safe house. Shadow goes where Sophie goes. Understood. Shadow's part of the package. Jake paused and Mac could hear him moving, getting dressed, grabbing gear. Mac, how bad is this? Mac looked at Victoria, at the building schematic, at the 3 bodies cooling on marble floor. Bad enough, I'm carrying again. Jake whistled low, understanding everything that statement meant. I'll call Ramirez, get backup. No cops, they're monitoring police frequencies. Mac checked his weapon muscle memory, loading a fresh magazine without looking. Just Sophie, get her safe, then come back here. Bring the gear from Kandahar. Jake's voice went quiet, serious. Mac, that gear is illegal. Good thing I'm not a cop anymore. Mac hung up and met Victoria's eyes. Her hand was on his arm now, gripping tight anchor in chaos. Her voice came quiet but steel underneath. I asked you a question. Who are you, security guards? Don't move like that. Don't shoot like that. Don't have gear from Kandahar. Mac's answer was tactical, practical. The only answer that mattered in the next 60 seconds. Ma'am, right now you have 2 choices. Option 1, stand here asking questions while your daughter gets taken. Option 2, trust that I'm someone who can get her back. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Mac was already moving toward the stairwell, weapon up, checking corners, falling into patterns his body remembered, even when his mind wanted to forget. Unless you want to do this yourself. Victoria hesitated, 1 heartbeat, calculation, assessment, decision, then followed. She kicked off her heels, practical smart. Lily's room has a secondary lock. Code is 0 to 712. Birth date, anniversary. My husband David and I, she stopped. Mid-sentence, stopped moving, stopped breathing for just a second. Wait, David Morgan, he was military, Delta Force. He mentioned a Mac who saved his life in... Mac cleared the stairwell, weapon up, voice flat. Kandahar, yeah. Your husband was my commanding officer, ma'am, for 6 years until... Victoria's voice went cold, sharp as broken glass. Until he died, 3 years ago. Car accident, they said. Brake failure. Mac's repetition of her words carried weight, carried doubt, carried 3 years of unanswered questions. Brake failure. Victoria grabbed his shoulder, spinning him around. You think, I think we save Lily first, compare notes later. Mac hit the third-floor landing weapon, sweeping left, then right, clearing the corridor. Stay behind me, stay quiet, stay low. If I say run, you run. If I say hide, you hide. Clear. Crystal, Victoria's hands were steady. Now fear transformed into purpose. And after this is over, you and I are having a very long conversation about my husband. Yes, ma'am. They found Lily's room door open. Bad sign, wrong sign, the kind of sign that meant Mac's tactical timeline had just collapsed. He signaled Victoria to stay back. Cleared the room, military-style slice, the pie check corners, closet, bathroom, under bed, behind furniture. Empty, abandoned, taken, but not without leaving a message. On the bed, Lily's pink backpack sat open. Inside, her iPad, deliberately left screen, still lit with recent activity. Mac hit play on the video recording, and Lily Morgan's 7-year-old face filled the screen with remarkable composure that reminded Mac painfully of Sophie's unnatural calm during asthma attacks. Lily's voice was steady, practiced exactly what a smart mother would teach a smart daughter. Mommy, if you're seeing this, the bad men took me. I pressed the necklace button like you taught me. I heard them say Blackwell wants the girl at the mountain facility. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry I forgot my spelling homework. Please find me. I love you. Video ended. Silence filled the room like water filling lungs. Victoria's hand covered her mouth, holding back a sob that wanted to tear free, holding back panic that wanted to drown thought. She's 7. She's 7 years old. Mac's voice cut through her spiraling. She's smart. She gave us intel. Mountain facility that's 40 miles north. Old Morgan Tech R&D site abandoned 3 years ago. He watched understanding dawn in Victoria's eyes. Abandoned when your husband died. You think it's connected? I think Richard Blackwell has been circling your company like a vulture for 3 years. I think he wants something your husband protected, and I think he's willing to kill children to get it. Mac checked his phone message from Jake Sophie, secured safe house location, encrypted one weight off his shoulders, but not enough, never enough until both children were home. What does he want? Victoria's eyes widened with realization and horror. Sentinel. What's Sentinel? The explanation came fast, executive briefing condensed to essentials. AI-guided weapon system. Battlefield autonomy, target acquisition without human input. David was lead developer. When he died, project went dark. I shut it down, said it was too dangerous. Victoria's hands trembled, fingers clenching into fists. But the prototype still exists, locked in sub-level storage, classified access only. Mac understood immediately, the whole plan clicking into place with terrible clarity. Blackwell can't steal it from here, too much security. But if he has leverage over the CEO, say her kidnapped daughter, he thinks I'll trade Sentinel for Lily. Mac's question was tactical, necessary, brutal. Will you? Victoria met his eyes without hesitation. Without doubt, mother before CEO. Without hesitation. But you're not going to let it come to that, are you? Mac smiled cold, dangerous, the smile of a warrior who'd been chained too long and finally let loose. Ma'am, I haven't touched a rifle in 5 years. Haven't run an op, haven't cleared a building, haven't done any of the things I was trained to do. He checked his weapon, loaded a fresh magazine with movements so practiced they were meditation. Tonight I remember why I was good at it. Victoria's voice carried steel underneath the fear. What do? We nothing. You call Blackwell, negotiate, buy time. I get your daughter back. Alone against professional mercenaries. Mac's answer was simple, absolute, the kind of certainty that came from experience written in blood. I've had worse odds. Victoria stepped closer, invading his tactical space, forcing him to meet her eyes. David said you were the best operator in Delta, said you could do things that shouldn't be possible. He said if I ever needed help, needed someone absolutely trustworthy, I should find Mac Sullivan. Mac turned surprised despite everything. He said that 3 weeks before he died, like he knew. Victoria pulled a folded paper from her laptop bag, carried it for 3 years, never far from her, worn at the edges from being touched. Being read, being remembered. She handed it to Mac, and his hands were steady as he opened it, But his heart wasn't. His heart was pounding with the weight of old debts and new responsibilities. David Morgan's letter. 3 lines in precise handwriting, Mac remembered from mission briefings and after-action reports. Tori, if you're reading this, Blackwell won. Trust Mac Sullivan with your life. With Lily's life. Trust him like I did. Sentinel can't fall into wrong hands. Destroy it if you must. But stay alive. I love you. Protect our girl. David. Mac folded the letter carefully, handed it back, his voice rougher than he intended. I failed him once, ma'am. I won't fail him twice. Victoria's question came quiet, carrying 3 years of unanswered grief. What happened in Kandahar? Mac's jaw tightened, muscles working under skin processing pain he'd never properly dealt with. I lived. He should have. His eyes went distant, seeing sand and blood, in a moment when everything went wrong. That debt's been waiting 3 years to get paid. Tonight it gets settled. They moved back to Mac's security office, converted it into operations center, pulled up maps and schematics and satellite imagery. At exactly 12:17 a.m., Mac's phone rang. Unknown number encrypted. He put it on speaker so Victoria could hear, so she could understand what they were up against. Richard Blackwell's voice came smooth, confident, the tone of a man who'd never lost, never failed, never faced consequences. Mr. Sullivan, or should I call you Sergeant Sullivan, Delta Force 5th Special Forces Group 14, confirmed kills 2 Silver Stars, 1 very tragic discharge after your wife's death. Mac's voice stayed flat, professional, giving nothing away. Where are the children? Blackwell's laugh carried casual cruelty. Safe. For now. Lily Morgan is enjoying my mountain hospitality. And young Sophie, well, Jake Torres has her, doesn't he? Former Delta just like you. Still, I have eyes on that safe house. 1 phone call, and Sophie's nebulizer mysteriously stops working. Asthma attacks can be fatal, I'm told. Mac's hand clenched the phone so hard, plastic cracked, white shards falling to the desk like snow. Victoria put a hand on his arm, steadying, supporting anchor in rage. Victoria's voice cut through with the executive authority. What do you want? Blackwell's answer was practiced, rehearsed, the pitch of a man who'd thought this through. Ah, Mrs. Morgan, still at the office, how dedicated. I want what your husband wouldn't give me 3 years ago, Sentinel. Full prototype, all research data source code. In exchange, you get Lily back unharmed. And if I refuse, the threat came casual, conversational, describing horror like discussing weather. Then Lily takes a very long fall off a very high cliff. Tragic accident. And Sophie Sullivan, well, medical emergencies happen. Children with severe asthma are so fragile. Mac's vision tunneled. The room disappeared except for Blackwell's voice, that smug, arrogant certainty that money and power meant immunity, meant safety, meant he could threaten children and walk away clean. Mac had heard that tone before. From warlords, terrorists, men who thought themselves untouchable, unreachable, beyond justice. Mac had touched every single one. His voice came dead calm, each word precise as a rifle shot. Here's my counter-offer. You let both children go unharmed, and I don't hunt you to the ends of the earth and make your death last 3 days. Blackwell laughed, genuine amusement. Tough talk from a night shift security guard. Mac's response carried no emotion, no threat, just statement of fact. I'm not a security guard, Blackwell. I'm the man who put 2 bullets in Saeed Hassan's skull at 1,500 meters and 60-knot winds. I'm the operator who walked into a Taliban stronghold alone and walked out with 12 hostages. I'm the nightmare your mercenaries tell stories about to scare new recruits. His tone didn't rise, didn't waver, absolute as gravity. And you just threatened my daughter. Silence. Long silence. Mac could hear breathing, could hear movement, could hear the moment Blackwell realized he'd miscalculated. When Blackwell spoke again, the amusement was gone, replaced by uncertainty. You're bluffing. Mac's answer was tactical, precise, designed to create doubt. Am I? Ask Marcus Webb, your head of security. Former Ranger, did 3 tours in Afghanistan. Ask him if he's ever heard of Reaper. More silence, muffled conversation. Then Webb's voice, shaken, filtered through distance. Mr. Blackwell, Reaper was a legend. Unconfirmed. Black Ops. If he's real, if Sullivan is him. Blackwell's control was slipping, fear creeping into anger. Shut up, Webb. Sullivan, you're going to... Mac cut him off, voice absolute carrying command that made Victoria straighten unconsciously. No, you're going to listen. You have until 300 a.m. to release both children unharmed at the old ranger station on Highway 86. You do that, and you get to keep breathing. You don't, and the last thing you see before you die will be my face. Blackwell's rage finally broke through polished veneer. You think you can threaten me? I have 20 trained mercenaries. I have resources you can't imagine I will destroy. Mac's interruption was quiet final. You have 20 scared operators who just realized they're up against someone who makes them obsolete. He checked his watch with deliberate calm. You have 2 hours and 43 minutes. Clock's ticking. He hung up. Victoria stared, processing, calculating, reassessing everything she thought she knew. Reaper, that's actually your call sign. Mac was already texting Jake, fingers moving fast across screen, full kit, Overwatch position, mountain facility, 2 hours. Long time ago. The story about Saeed Hassan. True, July 12, 2019, 1,400-meter shot, actually not 1,500, but close enough. Max stood, movements economical, purposeful, operator mode fully engaged. And the Taliban stronghold. Classified. Victoria stood too, matching his energy, refusing to be sidelined. We have 2 hours before Blackwell realizes you're serious. In that time, I need to gear up, recon the facility, establish firing positions, and plan 3 different extraction routes. Victoria corrected, CEO posture, non-negotiable. I'm coming. Mac's refusal was automatic protective. No, you're not. Victoria crossed her arms, planted her feet immovable. My daughter, my company, my husband's death, my fight. And I have building schematics for that facility, original design, security systems, blind spots David built in deliberately. Mac considered running calculations, weighing assets against risks. You'll do exactly what I say when I say it. Yes. You stay in Overwatch while I go in. Yes. If something goes wrong, you take Lily and run. Leave me. Victoria's refusal matched his earlier one, absolute. No. Mac's voice hardened. Victoria. Her interruption carried steel wrapped in determination. I said no, we get Lily together or not at all. She met his eyes, and Max saw the force that built a billion-dollar company from her husband's legacy, the strength that survived 3 years of corporate warfare, the steel that wouldn't bend. You gave David a promise. I'm giving you one. We're both keeping ours. Mac nodded slowly, accepting, adapting, adjusting his tactical plan. All right, but first, he pulled out his phone, called a number he hadn't dialed in 5 years, knowing what he was asking, knowing what it would run. The voice that answered was groggy, suspicious. This better be good. Mac's request was direct, no preamble. Ramirez, it's Mac Sullivan. I need a favor. A big one, illegal one. Full awareness now, alarm mixing with curiosity. Jesus, Mac, I thought you retired. I tried, didn't take. Mac pulled up a map on his computer, marked coordinates. I need eyes-on satellite, full mountain range north of Morgan Tech, real-time thermal. And I need it in 90 minutes. Ramirez's response carried professional concern. That's NSA-level request, hermano. I can't just... Mac played his trump card, the only card that mattered. David Morgan's daughter is being held hostage by Richard Blackwell. Same Blackwell we suspected in the weapons trafficking case 6 years ago. Same Blackwell who walked because someone high up protected him. Pause. Long pause. Processing. You're going after Blackwell tonight. Mac's answer was simple, absolute. Right now, and I need to see every heat signature in that facility before I go in. Ramirez's voice went quiet, serious, the tone of a man choosing between regulations and righteousness. Mac, this is career-ending if it goes wrong. Mac's response carried finality. Then it better not go wrong. I wouldn't ask if I had another option. Ramirez sighed, decision made, consequences accepted. 90 minutes. I'll have satellite data streamed to this number. But Mac, you didn't get this from me. Mac smiled despite everything. Get what from you, thanks, brother. He hung up, turned to Victoria, saw her watching him with new understanding. You have climbing gear in this building? Victoria blinked, processing the shift. Engineering department. Why boy? Mac's answer painted the picture of their next 2 hours. Because in 90 minutes, We're going to climb a mountain in the dark, infiltrate a fortified facility held by 20 armed mercenaries, extract your daughter without casualties, and destroy a billion-dollar weapon system. Victoria smiled, first genuine smile since this nightmare started, fierce with purpose. Just another Tuesday for Reaper, I suppose. Mac's response carried weight of history, of missions run and survived, of impossible odds overcome through skill and will and refusal to quit. Ma'am, every day was Tuesday in Delta. The mountain road twisted like a serpent through darkness, each switchback climbing higher into terrain that made Mac's tactical instincts scream warnings. No cover, no alternate routes. One way up, one way down. Perfect ambush territory. Victoria gripped the door handle as the truck's tires fought for purchase on gravel that wanted to slide them sideways off the cliff. Her voice stayed steady despite white knuckles. David used to bring me up here. Before Lily. Before Sentinel. Back when we thought building weapons could make the world safer. Mac downshifted engine growling against grade and gravity. When did he realize different? The answer came weighted with years of questions Victoria had never voiced aloud. 6 months before he died, he started pulling back from the project, adding fail-safes Blackwell didn't authorize, building back doors into code nobody else could access. She turned, studying Mac's profile and dashboard glow. He was protecting Sentinel from his own company, from people he'd worked with for years. What did he know? Mac's hands adjusted grip on steering wheel, old wound in his shoulder aching with altitude and stress. Kandahar wasn't about the mission they briefed us on. David figured that out 3 weeks in. His voice went distant, seeing sand and blood in moments that replayed every time he closed his eyes. We were supposed to extract a defector with intel on Taliban weapons caches. Clean op, in and out, minimal contact. Victoria waited in understanding silence. Sometimes it extracted truth better than questions. Mac's jaw worked, processing pain he'd never fully dealt with. The defector was bait. The real target was what David carried: prototype schematics for autonomous targeting systems. Early Sentinel research. Someone wanted those schematics bad enough to sacrifice an entire Delta team to get them. The truck crested a ridge and Morgantech's mountain facility sprawled below like a sleeping beast. Abandoned 3 years, but lights burned in windows that should have been dark. Vehicles clustered near the main entrance. Thermal bloom from generators working overtime. Not abandoned. Reactivated. Ready. Victoria's breath caught. He knew. David knew someone inside was selling to hostile buyers. That's why he built the failsafes. Mac killed the engine, let momentum carry them into shadow cast by massive pines. That's why he died. And that's why Blackwell waited 3 years, needed time to crack David's protections, to build new access, to position himself for this. His phone buzzed. Ramirez Thermal updated: 23 hostiles, confirmed single child separated in northwest corner, second floor guard, rotation every 30 minutes, next rotation in 12 minutes. Max studied the feed, committing guard positions to memory, identifying patterns, finding gaps. Single child. Not two. Just Lily. Mac's tactical mind processed this. Sophie was safe with Jake, but Blackwell's threat about her remained active. Divided attention, exactly what the enemy wanted. Victoria leaned close, shoulder pressed against his, sharing the small screen. Northwest corner, that's where David's private lab was. Secondary entrance through ventilation system, but it's a 15-foot drop. Mac calculated angles, risk factors, timing. We go in together. You know the facility, I provide security. Extract Lily first, destroy Sentinel, second escape third. Victoria's hand caught his wrist, firm pressure demanding attention. I know where David hid the real fail-safe, not in Sentinel's code, but in the building itself, a kill switch that would destroy the entire prototype if activated. She pulled up schematics on her phone, highlighted a section Mac had never seen. It's here, in the sub-basement. He made me memorize the sequence in case something happened to him. Mac studied the hidden corridor, the unmarked room, the elaborate security David had buried in architecture. Why didn't you activate it before destroy Sentinel when he died? Victoria's answer carried 3 years of second guessing. Because I didn't believe he was murdered. Because I trusted the investigation. Because I was grieving and exhausted and told myself I was being paranoid. Her fingers traced the screen, following the path David had shown her. I was wrong about all of it. Headlights swept across their position, Jake's truck black Ford with reinforced suspension and windows that could stop small arms fire. He parked beside them, killed lights emerged with tactical bags that looked civilian legal but definitely weren't. Jake Torres hadn't aged well in 5 years since Mac last worked with him. Gray threading through black hairlines carved deep around eyes that had seen too much shoulders carrying weight that wasn't physical. But his hands were steady as he distributed gear, his voice calm as he ran through equipment checks. He tossed Mac a tactical vest without preamble. Sophie's stable shadow won't leave at her side, won't let Dr. Chen touch her without my authorization signal. Smart Dog knows she's vulnerable. His eyes found Mac's held them with concern that transcended professional courtesy. But Mac, her breathing's getting worse. Stress response may be triggered remotely somehow. Dr. Chen says we have maybe 3 hours before she needs hospital intervention. Mac felt ice forming in his chest. 3 hours. Extract Lily, destroy Sentinel. Get back to Denver before Sophie's condition deteriorated beyond home treatment. Tight timeline. Brutal math. Shadows with her. Mac needed that confirmation, needed to know his daughter had protection even when he couldn't be there. Jake's answer provided fractional comfort. Won't let anyone near her except me, and only because I used your override code. That dog's better security than half the operators I've worked with. He handed Mac a rifle that had been illegal since 2004, suppressor-attached scope zeroed for his specific eye relief. She'll hold. Now let's make sure Lily gets to hold too. Victoria accepted her own vest, adjusting straps with surprising competence. David insisted I do tactical training. Said a CEO running a defense contractor should understand what we sold. She checked the Glock 19 Jake provided, ejected magazine, verified full load, chambered round with practiced efficiency. I thought he was being paranoid. Turns out paranoia is just preparation for reality nobody wants to acknowledge. Mac caught Jake's raised eyebrow, answered the unspoken question. Mrs. Morgan is coming inside. She has intel we need, knows facility layout. David never documented officially. Jake processed this, decided to trust Mac's judgment. You're up, your call. But we do this clean extract, child first, evidence destruction. Second escape third. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. He pulled up the thermal feed on a ruggedized tablet. 23 hostiles, but only 6 are actual operators. Rest are corporate security, probably don't know what they signed up for. Mac studied the display, identifying professional spacing versus civilian clustering. The 6 operators are the problem. Former military, probably mercenary circuit, definitely experienced. He traced guard rotations with his finger. They're running anti-sniper protocols, paired teams overlapping fields of fire, rotating positions every 30 minutes to prevent pattern analysis. Victoria pointed to a blind spot near the loading dock. But David built that loading dock wrong on purpose. Architects complained the angle didn't make sense. He insisted. She zoomed the schematic. Because it creates dead space thermal cameras can't cover. You can approach within 50 feet without being seen. Jake whistled, low respect bleeding through professional assessment. Your husband was forward-thinking. Victoria's smile carried pain and pride equally. He was Delta before he was an engineer. Said the best defense contractors understood offense intimately. Mac made decision, started loading magazines with muscle memory older than Sophie, older than Rebecca, older than any civilian life he'd tried to build. Jake, you take overwatch position on the eastern ridge, thermal scope, suppressed rifle comlink open. You spot threats before I do. You drop them clean. Jake nodded, already moving, already calculating angles and ranges and wind drift at altitude. Mac turned to Victoria. You stay with me until we reach David's lab. You activate the failsafe while I extract Lily. Then we all go home. Victoria's agreement came firm. Understood. They moved through darkness like ghosts, letting pine shadows swallow their approach. Using terrain, Mac's training had taught him to read like a map written in elevation and cover. The loading dock materialized ahead exactly where Victoria's schematics promised, the blind spot exactly as David had designed it. Mac pressed against concrete, weapon up, scanning for movement through scope. Jake's voice came through earpiece, calm and professional. Overwatch in position. I have eyes on 3 tangos, main entrance, 2 on roof, 1 mobile patrol, northwest corner, near the child. Thermal shows single heat signature in target room, small consistent with 7-year-old. Confirmed one child, not two. Mac's response was tactical shorthand. Delta operators learned to speak like a second language. Copy. Beginning approach northwest. Sophie status. Jake's pause carried weight before answering. Shadow just triggered alert. Sophie's breathing deteriorated. Doctor, Chen administering emergency albuterol. You've got 2 hours, maybe less. Mac's world narrowed. 2 hours to extract Lily and get 40 miles back to Denver. Math that worked only if everything went perfectly, which it never did. Victoria saw his expression, understood the calculation. We move fast. They slipped through the loading dock door. Victoria had the access code. David had made her memorize 6 digits that opened a lock that shouldn't exist on an abandoned building. Inside was darkness and dust and the smell of disused machinery slowly rusting. Mac clicked on infrared flashlight, illuminating green-tinged corridor that stretched toward facility core. His training catalog details automatically clear sightlines, no clutter, suspiciously clean floor for supposedly abandoned building. Someone had been here recently maintaining access routes. Victoria moved close, whispering against his ear. The lab is 2 floors up. We can take maintenance stairs. They're isolated, rarely used even when facility was active. They climbed in silence, boots finding concrete steps that didn't creak, didn't announce their presence. At second floor landing, Mac held up closed fist military signal for halt. Voices beyond the door, casual conversation guards who didn't expect threats. Jake's voice provided context. 2 tangos in corridor outside lab. Corporate security, not operators. Pistols only holstered. They're focused on interior door, not watching their backs. Window is 30 seconds before shift change brings professionals. Mac calculated, weighed options, chose the path with lowest casualty risk. He turned to Victoria, handed her his rifle, mimed staying put. She understood, nodded, positioned herself to provide covering fire if needed. Mac eased the door open, slipped through shadow to shadow, using techniques that were muscle memory, deeper than thought. The guards were discussing football scores, Monday morning quarterbacking plays, and coaching decisions, completely unaware that death approached with professional silence. First guard went down with sleeper hold, Mac's arm around throat pressure, on carotid arteries, unconscious in 4 seconds without sound or struggle. Second guard turned, mouth opening to shout warning, but Mac's strike to solar plexus folded him, follow-up to jaw, shut his brain down before vocal cords engaged. 8 seconds total. No shots fired. No alerts raised. Mac zip-tied both men with restraints from their own belts, gagged them with their own shirts, dragged them into utility closet, where shift change wouldn't find them for at least 10 minutes. Small victories bought time that operations survived on. Victoria joined him, moving with surprising stealth for a CEO in tactical gear. They stood outside the lab door, listening, assessing through sounds and silence both. Inside, a child's voice humming softly. Lily probably singing to herself, probably trying to stay brave the way Sophie did during asthma attacks. Solo voice. Confirmed one child. Mac's phone buzzed, text from Jake. Sophie crash. Chen needs you here in 90 minutes or hospital. Move now. 90 minutes. The timeline just collapsed. Mac signaled Victoria, 3 fingers, 2 fingers, 1. They breached together. The door opened on well-oiled hinges David had probably maintained for exactly this purpose. Mac went high. Victoria went low. Textbook CQB, entry executed with precision that came from her training and his experience combining into effective partnership. Inside was converted storage space, single camping mat on concrete floor, one child sitting with remarkable composure considering circumstances. No Emma Blackwell, no Sophie. Just Lily Morgan, 7 years old, clutching stuffed rabbit, like Sophie clutched hers, trying to be brave when brave was the hardest thing in the world. One guard watched her with the bored attention of a man who'd been promised easy money for simple work, who was realizing too late that simple work didn't exist in Blackwell's world. The guard saw them reach for his weapon with reaction time that was professional but not professional enough. Mac's shot took him in the shoulder, precise, disabling, not killing. The man went down screaming, weapon clattering across linoleum, hand-clutching wound that wouldn't kill, but absolutely prevented further threat. Lily looked up, saw Victoria and her carefully maintained composure that shattered like glass under pressure, too long sustained. Mommy, Victoria was across the room in heartbeat, wrapping arms around daughter, who'd been so brave, so strong, so terrified underneath it all. I've got you, baby. I've got you. Max secured the wounded guard, zip-tied, gagged, bleeding, controlled. The man would live to face federal charges, would testify against Blackwell's network, would serve time but survive. Max rules disable don't kill unless absolutely necessary. Some lines were bright and absolute. He knelt before Lily, voice gentle, despite tactical urgency screaming they needed to move. You were very brave, Lily. The video you left helped us find you. Now I need you to stay brave a little longer while we get you out of here. Can you do that? Lily's nod was small but determined, Rebecca's daughter in miniature, same courage, same resilience, same understanding that sometimes surviving meant trusting adults you barely knew. Jake's voice shattered the moment with news Mac had been dreading. Mac problem. Sophie's O2 saturation dropping 82%. Dr. Chen says if you're not here in 60 minutes, she's calling ambulance. That means police, that means questions, that means Blackwell's people potentially tracking her. Mac's tactical brain ran scenarios that all ended badly. Stay to destroy Sentinel. Sophie might die. Leave immediately without destroying Sentinel. Blackwell's network survived and eventually came after both children again. No good options, only less terrible ones. David Morgan's ghost whispered the answer mission first because incomplete missions meant everyone died eventually. Sophie was tough. Sophie had Shadow and Dr. Chen. Sophie would hold because she had to hold. Tell Dr. Chen 60 minutes. I'm finishing what I started. Victoria read his face, understood the calculation he was making, understood he was choosing her daughter's extraction and Sentinel's destruction over rushing to his own daughter. The weight of that choice showed in her eyes gratitude mixed with guilt, mixed with respect for a man who could make impossible decisions and live with them. We move fast, Victoria said, standing with Lily in her arms. Sub-basement, fail-safe, then we run. But Jake's voice carried new urgency. Negative on leaving. Blackwell just arrived, 3-vehicle convoy, 20 additional mercs. You're surrounded, extraction routes compromised. Mac, you need to hold position and wait for federal response. Mac checked his watch. Federal response was minimum 40 minutes out. Sophie needed him in 60 minutes. Blackwell's reinforcements were arriving now. The math didn't work. The math never worked, unless someone created new math. Victoria, take Lily and go for the fail-safe. I'll delay Blackwell. Victoria's refusal was immediate, absolute. We do this together or not at all. David's protocol requires 2 people, 1 to activate, 1 to confirm. Security measure he built in. Mac cursed silently. Of course David built in redundancy. Of course the fail-safe required partnership. Dead man's final lesson, nobody operates alone successfully. Then we move together fast. Jake, I need you to engage that convoy, slow them down, create confusion, buy us 10 minutes. Jake's response carried the resignation of a man who'd known this moment would come eventually. Copy that. Going loud in 3, 2, 1. The night erupted with suppressed rifle fire from Jake's position. Windshields shattered on Blackwell's convoy. Tires exploded. Men dove for cover, returning fire at muzzle flashes that appeared and disappeared from impossible angles as Jake relocated between shots. Mac, Victoria, and Lily ran for the stairwell, descended towards sub-basement levels David had designed with paranoia that proved justified. Emergency lighting flickered, red alarm, klaxons wailed, but the chaos was ally now, was cover for movement, was distraction that professionals exploited. Sub-basement smelled of machine oil and concrete, of spaces built for purpose rather than comfort. Victoria led them through corridors that shouldn't exist on official blueprints to a door marked environmental control that opened to code she'd memorized 3 years ago, 07121987. Their anniversary plus David's enlistment year. Romance wrapped in operational security. Inside was exactly what David had hidden: industrial-grade thermite charges, wired to Sentinel's prototype components, positioned to destroy without explosion, that would kill nearby personnel, configured to melt technology into slag that no recovery could salvage. Victoria's hands moved across the control panel with certainty that came from David's training, from nights he'd made her practice this sequence until she could do it blindfolded from husband, who knew his death might come and refused to let his life's work become weapon in wrong hands. Activation requires two keys, Victoria explained, pulling a small metal key from chain around her neck Mac had never noticed. David gave me one. The second is hidden here. She reached behind a panel, retrieved identical key from magnetic holder. He said if I ever needed to activate it meant he was gone and I was alone. He didn't account for you. Mac understood the gift David had given them both: partnership in protecting what mattered, collaboration in ensuring justice together, in facing threats that would overwhelm solo operators. They turned the keys simultaneously. Red lights became amber. Countdown began 10 minutes until thermite ignition, until Sentinel became memory rather than threat. Jake's voice carried strain through earpiece. Convoy suppressed but not stopped. They're organizing tactical response. You've got maybe 5 minutes before they breach your position. 5 minutes to escape, 10 minutes until Sentinel destroyed, 60 minutes until Sophie needed him. The math was getting tighter. They ran back upward, Lily silent in Victoria's arms, Mac clearing corners with efficiency that came from decades of practice. First floor corridor, then loading dock, then blessed darkness and cold mountain air. Except the loading dock exit was blocked. 6 hostiles in professional formation, weapons-trained leader's voice carrying through the night. That's far enough. Mac recognized the stance, the spacing, the calm competence. Former SEALs, not corporate security, not amateurs playing soldier. Warriors who'd served honorably once before money corrupted purpose, before retirement, proved less comfortable than mercenary work. The tactical situation was brutal. Mac caught in fatal funnel, Victoria exposed, Lily vulnerable, Jake too far away to provide support fire. Surrender meant Blackwell won. Fighting meant crossfire that would kill Lily. Mac made a different choice. He lowered his weapon, stepped forward into line of fire, let them see his face clearly in moonlight. You know who I am. The leader's eyes flickered, calculation, assessment, recognition dawning. Reaper. Mac's voice carried absolute certainty. That's right. And you know what that means. You know my record. You know Syed Hassan. You know Kandahar. You know the reason operators tell stories about me to scare new recruits. He gestured at Lily. That's a 7-year-old girl. That's the daughter of my commanding officer. That's someone I swore to protect with my life. The leader's weapon wavered fractionally. Professional reading, professional warrior, recognizing warrior. Mac continued, voice dropping to conversational tone that carried more threat than shouting ever could. You can shoot me. Probably will shoot me, but I will kill 3 of you before I go down. And then Jake Torres, you know him, 5th Special Forces Group 43, confirmed, kills current Overwatch position, 200 meters east, will kill the rest of you before your bodies hit the ground. He let that sink in, let them do the math. Or Mac's voice went quieter still. You can recognize that Blackwell hired you under false pretenses. Told you this was corporate security, didn't mention kidnapping children, didn't mention that everyone here becomes accessory to felonies that carry life sentences. You walk away now, you're men who got cold feet. You stay your child murderers when federal response arrives. Silence stretched. Wind through pines carried the distant sound of Jake's rifle still engaging. Blackwell's convoy carried the wail of approaching sirens that promised federal cavalry was finally coming, carried the weight of decisions that would define these men's futures. The SEAL leader made his choice. Stand down. All units, stand down. His team hesitated, loyalty warring with survival instinct, but leader's authority held. Weapons lowered, hands raised slightly. Professional courtesy between warriors who recognized the mission had changed without their consultation. You should have researched who you were up against. The leader told Mac, respect bleeding through resignation. Blackwell said easy money, corporate security. Didn't mention Reaper. Blackwell lies to everyone, Mac said. It's his nature. The SEALs departed, melting into darkness, leaving weapons behind in gesture that said, we're out, contract void. Blackwell can burn. 6 professionals choosing honor over money because some training went deeper than paychecks. Some lines were still bright enough to see. Mac, Victoria, and Lily reached the truck as thermite charges ignited behind them. Not explosion, but intense burning, white-hot chemical fire that reached temperatures no metal could survive, that turned Sentinel into puddle of molten slag that no recovery could salvage, that erased $3 billion of research because some prices were too high to pay, regardless of market value. The night burned bright for 30 seconds, then dark again. Done. Jake's voice carried satisfaction. Sentinel is gone. Federal response is 90 seconds out. Blackwell fled on foot into woods tracking him with thermal, but he's moving fast. Mac, you need to go. Sophie can't wait. Mac drove like man possessed, like father desperate, like operator who'd made impossible choice and now needed to ensure it hadn't cost him everything. Victoria held Lily in back seat, both safe, both alive, mission accomplished. But Sophie was 40 miles away and running out of time. Mac's phone buzzed. Doctor, Chen Monar O2 sat at 78%. Shadow won't let me touch nebulizer without you. Get here now or I call 911. 78%. Dangerously low. Hospital threshold. Sophie was crashing and Mac was still 30 miles out. He pressed accelerator, harder truck, protesting the speed on mountain roads that weren't designed for racing, that killed people who drove too fast, that demanded respect Mac couldn't afford to give. 20 miles, 10 miles, 5 miles. Denver Memorial materialized through pre-dawn light. Mac abandoned truck in emergency zone, sprinted through doors, found Jake in waiting room, looking haggard and relieved simultaneously. Room 347, Shadow's inside. He knows you're here, heard you coming 3 minutes ago. Jake's hand gripped Mac's shoulder. She's stable now. Dr. Chen got her intubated once you arrived, and Shadow stood down. But Mac, it was close. Minutes close. Mac took stairs because elevators were too slow, burst into room 347, and found his daughter. Sophie lay small and fragile in hospital bed, oxygen mask over face, chest rising and falling with steady rhythm that modern medicine and father's arrival both ensured. Shadow lay across her legs, immovable guardian, dark eyes tracking Mac's entrance with recognition and relief equally visible. Dr. Chen looked up from monitors. She crashed hard, stress response triggered acute attack. But she'll recover fully. You got here just in time. Mac collapsed into chair beside bed, took Sophie's small hand in his large one, felt tears he didn't remember starting, tracked down his face. I'm sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry. Sophie's eyes fluttered open, groggy from sedation but aware. You saved Lily, Mac nodded, voice breaking. Yeah, we saved Lily. Good. Sophie's smile was weak but genuine. That's what heroes do. And she fell back asleep, secure in knowledge that Daddy kept promises, that bad people were stopped, that heroes won because heroes had to win. Max sat there as sun rose over Denver, as Sophie breathed steady, as Shadow maintained his vigil, as Victoria arrived with Lily and Jake followed with coffee and updates that Blackwell was still at large, but his network was burning down around him. The mission was complete. The price was paid. Sophie was alive. Some victories came measured in children breathing peacefully. Today that was enough. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new hunts, new mathematics of protection and justice. But today, Max Sullivan sat beside his daughter and let himself feel relief that comes only after impossible choices turn out right, despite odds that said they shouldn't. 3 weeks crawled past like wounded animals seeking somewhere to die. Sophie returned to school with new inhaler. Victoria's company insurance covered without copay, without question, without the grinding anxiety that had defined Mac's finances for 8 years. Shadow walked her to the bus stop each morning, waiting until the doors closed before trotting back home. Protective instincts extending beyond apartment walls. Lily Morgan invited Sophie to playdates and sleepovers, forming friendship forged in shared trauma that parents couldn't quite understand but recognized as necessary healing. The two girls had survived something together, understood something together, carried scars together that would bind them for life. Mac tried returning to security guard work, tried pretending the night that changed everything hadn't actually changed anything. But his hands found his concealed weapon during ID checks. His eyes tracked threats that didn't exist. His mind ran tactical assessments of office buildings that needed protecting from nothing more dangerous than aggressive salespeople. On day 17, Victoria called with offer Mac should have expected. I need head of security, someone who understands threats aren't always external, someone Sophie trusts, someone David would have trusted. Max stood in his apartment, kitchen coffee growing cold. Sophie at school learning math she'd master, and history she'd memorize. Shadow sat at his feet, head tilted, listening to conversation the dog couldn't understand but sensed was important. I'm not corporate material, ma'am. I check IDs. I write reports. I don't. Victoria's interruption carried steel wrapped in patience. You destroyed a $3 billion weapons system to protect children. You held position against 40 hostiles with limited ammunition and no support. You're exactly corporate material. Pause, then quieter. And I need someone I can trust, absolutely Mac. Because Blackwell's still out there and men like him don't forgive debts unpaid. The words Mac had been avoiding thinking about for 17 days. Blackwell escaped. Threat remained active. Sophie remained vulnerable despite federal protection, despite safe houses, despite everything money and law enforcement could provide. His answer came before conscious decision finished forming. When do I start? Victoria's relief bled through professional composure. Tomorrow, we have work to do. The work was rebuilding Morgan Tech's security from foundation up, identifying vulnerabilities David had documented, but never fully addressed, implementing protocols that assumed internal threats, rather than hoping they didn't exist. Mac hired Jake as deputy security chief, brought in operators he trusted with his life, built team that understood protection meant preparation. But at night alone in apartment, too quiet when Sophie slept, and shadow patrolled perimeter Mac researched. Blackwell's escape route, his known associates, his financial networks, his patterns of behavior. FBI had resources, Mac didn't. But Mac had motivation. FBI couldn't match Sophie's face when she asked if bad guys were really gone, if they were really safe, if Daddy really won. He'd lied to his daughter once. He wouldn't lie twice. On day 23, Morrison called with update Mac had been waiting for. We have Blackwell, or rather Interpol does. Paris trying to board private flight to Dubai. French authorities detained him on our warrants. Extradition papers are processing. Mac's hand tightened on phone until plastic creaked. When does he arrive? Morrison's answer carried satisfaction of hunter finally cornering prey. 72 hours. We're arranging transport security holding facility. Mac, this is happening. He's going to answer for David for the kidnapping, for everything. Mac thanked her, hung up, and immediately called Victoria with news that would bring closure or open wounds, possibly both. She answered on first ring, voice tight with hope she'd been containing for 3 weeks. Tell me. His single word carried weight of justice, delayed, but finally arriving. Paris, 72 hours. Victoria's sob came raw, unfiltered CEO mask cracking completely. Thank God. Thank God. They met at her office that evening after Sophie was asleep at Jake's house, with Shadow standing guard after Lily was tucked in with grandmother, watching after responsibilities were delegated and adults could finally discuss realities children shouldn't hear. Victoria poured scotch. Mac didn't normally drink raised glass. To David, and to the man who finally paid his debt. Mac touched glass to hers, but didn't drink immediately. Debt's not paid until Blackwell's convicted, sentenced, locked away where he can't hurt anyone else. Victoria's eyes held his over rim of crystal. And if legal system fails, if money buys acquittal despite evidence? Mac's answer was tactical assessment meeting unspoken question. Then we ensure justice arrives through other channels. Victoria nodded slowly, understanding what Mac was offering, what line he was willing to cross if pushed. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But hope was planning's opposite, was faith without preparation, was the luxury of people who'd never calculated odds while bullets flew. Mac believed in preparation, believed in contingencies, believed in ensuring outcomes through will and skill, and refusal to accept defeat. 72 hours became 60, became 48, became 24. Mac used the time well researching transport routes, identifying vulnerabilities, planning responses to scenarios. FBI wouldn't consider because FBI operated within legal constraints. Mac had shed the moment Blackwell threatened Sophie. Jake noticed the preparations, the extra weapons, cleaning the tactical gear positioned for rapid deployment. His voice came careful, concerned. Hermano, whatever you're planning, think about Sophie, about what happens if you cross lines that can't be uncrossed. Mac's response was honest, brutal. I think about Sophie every second. That's why I'm planning. On day 25, Blackwell's transport landed at Denver International, transferred to federal convoy, heading downtown to courthouse for arraignment. Mac watched from Morgan Tech's security center, monitoring police frequencies, tracking GPS, running parallel surveillance FBI didn't know existed. Standard route, standard protocols, standard vulnerabilities any professional could exploit if sufficiently motivated. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message, single line, trade. Sentinel source code for my silence about Sophie's real mother. Mac's blood froze. Sophie's real mother. Rebecca. Helicopter crash 5 years ago. That investigation called accident, but Mac had always suspected otherwise. Had always wondered if Rebecca's work on classified aviation systems had made her target, had gotten her killed by people who profited from stealing military technology. Second message. I know things about Rebecca Sullivan FBI doesn't. Things about who killed her. Things Sophie deserves to know when she's older. Give me code. I give you truth. Mac's hands shook with rage that threatened to override tactical thinking. Blackwell was offering trade information about Rebecca's death for technology that would arm terrorists, dictators, anyone with money and absence of conscience. The calculation was brutal. Sophie's right to know her mother's killers versus hundreds, thousands of potential casualties from weaponized AI spreading globally. David Morgan had already solved this equation by choosing destruction over compromise. Mac deleted messages, made decision, called Morrison. Blackwell's reaching out, trying to leverage information about my wife's death. He's desperate, which makes transport vulnerable. Morrison's response came sharp alert. What kind of leverage, Mac explained without revealing his internal calculation, without admitting how close Blackwell's offer had come to tempting him. Morrison listened, processed, made her own decisions. We're doubling security, no chances, no vulnerabilities, no mistakes. But doubling security meant doubling people, meant doubling potential corruption points, meant assuming all federal agents were clean when history proved otherwise. Mac knew Morrison was competent, professional, dedicated. He also knew systems failed when individuals decided money mattered more than duty. He called Victoria. Blackwell's making moves, trying to trade information for leverage. I need to be at courthouse tomorrow. Victoria didn't question, didn't hesitate. I'll be there too. Whatever happens, we face it together. Morning arrived, cold, overcast, threatening rain that would reduce visibility and complicate security protocols. Mac dressed carefully, suit jacket concealing tactical vest ankle holster, with backup weapon communications equipment disguised as normal smartphone accessories. He looked like businessman attending arraignment, moved like operator preparing for combat. Jake met him at courthouse steps, similarly dressed, similarly prepared. Morrison's got 100 agents inside SWAT on standby helicopters overhead. This is tightest security I've seen outside presidential visits. Mac scanned roof lines, calculated angles, identified positions sniper would choose. Blackwell's had 3 weeks to plan. Money buys creativity. They entered through metal detectors that caught nothing because everything Mac carried was technically legal, if positioned correctly, if explained properly, if questions didn't dig too deep. Victoria waited inside Lily safely with grandmother in shadow, on protective detail, her own security team flanking her like Secret Service protecting assets. She approached Mac with expression mixing determination and fear. Morrison says Blackwell's cooperating, providing evidence against co-conspirators expecting reduced sentence. Her voice dropped. He's going to walk Mac. Maybe not today, maybe not immediately, but he'll cut deal, serve minimal time, disappear into comfortable exile. Mac's jaw tightened. Not if testimony reveals more than he expects. Victoria understood immediately. What testimony? Mac pulled envelope from jacket documents he'd compiled over 3 weeks, connecting threads FBI had missed, proving patterns investigation had overlooked. David kept records Morrison never found. Records proving Blackwell wasn't just stealing Sentinel. He was selling it actively to hostile buyers while David was still alive, while David was still trying to protect it. That's not corporate espionage, that's treason. Victoria took envelope with trembling hands. How do you have David's records? I searched everywhere after he died. Mac's answer carried weight of secrets kept for 3 years. David gave them to me, week before he died. Said if anything happened, I should keep them safe, use them only if legal system failed him. He knew Victoria. He knew Blackwell was planning something, knew his own company was compromised, knew he might not survive. Victoria's composure shattered. Tears tracked down CEO face pain, held for 3 years, finally finding release. He knew and he didn't tell me. He protected me by keeping me ignorant. Mac's voice gentled. He protected you by ensuring someone outside the system had evidence that couldn't be buried. Evidence I'm giving Morrison right now. And they found Morrison in prosecutor's conference room reviewing arraignment procedures, preparing for circus federal trials became when money and media converged. She looked up as Mac entered, read his expression, understood this wasn't social visit. He placed envelope on table between them. David Morgan's insurance policy, communications with foreign buyers, financial transactions, Blackwell thought were encrypted evidence of ongoing treason spanning 6 years. Morrison opened envelope speed read contents, and her expression transformed from professional interest to predatory focus. This changes everything. This isn't plea bargain territory. This is life sentence without parole territory. She looked up, eyes sharp. Where did you get this? Mac's answer was simple, honest. David Morgan gave it to me 3 years ago, asked me to keep it safe, use it if needed. Tonight it's needed. Morrison gathered documents, stood with purpose, military officers recognized instantly. I need to brief prosecutors immediately. Arraignments in 40 minutes. This evidence makes Blackwell, flight risk eliminates bail possibility, locks him in federal custody pending trial. She paused at doorway. Thank you, Mac, for everything. After she left, Victoria turned to Mac with expression mixing gratitude and dawning realization. You've been carrying this for 3 years, sitting on evidence that could have brought Blackwell down years ago. Mac's explanation came measured, tactical. David's instructions were specific use only if legal system failed. For 3 years, I waited to see if system would work, if investigation would find truth naturally. It didn't. So I waited for a moment when this evidence would have maximum impact, when Blackwell was vulnerable, when testimony couldn't be buried or dismissed. He met her eyes. Tonight is that moment. Victoria studied him with new understanding. You're not just security chief, you're strategist. Playing long game while everyone else sees immediate moves. Mac's shrug carried weight of years running operations where patience meant survival. Delta taught me good tactics, beat quick reflexes. David taught me justice delayed can be justice amplified. 40 minutes later, courtroom filled with media, federal officials, corporate executives, watching competitors' downfall, and families of children whose terror had catalyzed everything. Mac sat beside Victoria, Jake on his other side, forming protective barrier between civilians and chaos. Blackwell entered in orange jumpsuit, wrists shackled, ankles chained, stripped of expensive suits in arrogant confidence. His eyes found Mac across courtroom, and recognition burned there, understanding that his escape had been temporary, that his leverage had failed, that the security guard he'd dismissed had orchestrated his downfall. Judge entered, proceedings began. Prosecutor outlined charges with additions from David's evidence. Transforming corporate crime into national security threat. Blackwell's attorneys attempted damage control, but evidence was overwhelming, damning, irrefutable. Bail denied. Flight risk confirmed. Trial date set 4 months out. Federal custody maintained. Blackwell's eyes never left Mac during entire arraignment, silent communication passing between men who'd wagered Sophie's safety against each other's skills. Mac had won tonight. But Blackwell's expression promised the game extended beyond courthouse walls, beyond federal custody, beyond conventional endings. 2 nights before trial began, Mac's security system screamed at 2:47 a.m. Not alarm malfunction, not false positive. Actual barrage, Morgan Tech facility, 6 hostiles, military-grade equipment, objective devastatingly clear. They were coming for David's evidence. Mac was dressed and armed in 90 seconds. Shadow paced the apartment, sensing Mac's combat readiness, low growl building in chest. Stay, Mac commanded. Guard Sophie. The dog positioned himself at Sophie's bedroom door, immovable. Jake met Mac at the facility 12 minutes after alert triggered, both men carrying equipment that was technically illegal but absolutely necessary. Not corporate security responding to break-in, operators defending against operators. The surveillance feeds showed tactical precision, shaped charges on evidence, vault suppression, team covering approaches, extraction unit standing by. Professional job, expensive job. The kind of operation that required international resources in complete disregard for law. Mac's voice came cold through comms. Jake, take roof position, suppressed rifle thermal scope. I'm going in through maintenance tunnel. Jake's response was equally professional. Copy, I have 6 tangos, 4 at vault 2 perimeter. Equipment suggests Eastern European mercs, probably Romanian or Bulgarian circuit. Mac slipped through tunnel David had built for emergency access, another security layer the architect had incorporated in without corporate authorization, another example of forward thinking that had saved lives tonight. He emerged behind perimeter guards moving with silence that came from decades of practice. First guard never knew death approached. Sleeper hold 4 seconds, unconscious, zip-tied and gagged. Second guard turned, reaching for weapon, but Mac's strike to solar plexus folded him before sound emerged. 2 down, 4 remaining. Jake's voice, vault team placing charges. 30 seconds to detonation. Mac moved faster. The explosives would destroy evidence, would erase David's documentation, would let Blackwell's network survive prosecution. Unacceptable outcome. He hit the vault room as timer showed 15 seconds. First hostile turned, weapon rising. Mac's shot, suppressed, precise, took the man in shoulder. Disabling, not killing. Never killing unless absolutely necessary. Second hostile was faster, more experienced. Former Special Forces. Mac recognized the movement patterns immediately. They engaged in close quarters, brutal efficiency against brutal efficiency, knife against knife, skill against skill. Mac won by margins measured in microseconds. The hostile went down with broken wrist and shattered knee, alive, but combat ineffective. 10 seconds. Third and fourth hostiles positioned behind vault door using David's own security as cover. Smart, professional, deadly. Jake's voice. I have angle on partial target. Permission to engage. Negative, evidence vault behind them. Any penetration risks destroying what we're protecting. 5 seconds. Mac made decision that training had prepared him for, but civilian life had made him hope he'd never need. He stepped into the open weapon, down hands visible. The hostiles saw him, weapons tracking, fingers tightening on triggers. Mac's voice cut through their decision-making with absolute authority. That timer hits 0, you destroy evidence that keeps you alive. Blackwell's network wants you dead witnesses to eliminate loose ends to tie. You detonate that vault, you become liabilities. 3 seconds. Lead hostiles' eyes flickered, calculation, assessment, sudden understanding. Professional recognizing, professional, mercenary recognizing truth. His hand shot out, grabbed timer, ripped it from shape charge with 1 second remaining. Who are you? Mac's answer was simple, absolute. Someone who knows how this game ends. You detonate, federal response brings full investigation. Blackwell gives up your identities to save himself. You're hunted internationally, nowhere safe, no retirement. Mac gestured at Volo. You walk away, now you're witnesses who got cold feet. Blackwell can't touch you without admitting guilt. The hostile processed this, looked at his partner, made decision that survival instinct demanded. We're done, contracts void. They departed through window they'd breached, rappelling into darkness, leaving weapons and explosives behind. Professional courtesy or survival calculation didn't matter which. They were gone. Max secured the evidence, checked vault integrity, confirmed David's documentation survived intact. The trial would proceed. Justice would have its day. Federal response arrived 7 minutes later, SWAT, FBI, forensics teams. Morrison led the charge, surveying the scene with expression, mixing respect and exasperation. Her voice came dry. You know, Mac, most people call 911 when criminals break into their building. Mac's response was equally dry. Most people don't have evidence worth destroying, criminals worth negotiating with, and training to handle both. Morrison studied the detained hostiles, the diffused explosives, the untouched evidence vault. Negotiated them down. Explained mathematics of survival. Smart men recognize truth when presented properly. Morrison's laugh carried no humor. You terrify me, Max Sullivan. The competent ones always do. She gestured at evidence vault. This secures conviction. Whatever Blackwell's network attempted tonight, they failed. But as federal teams processed crime scene and Mac drove home through pre-dawn darkness, he understood message the attack delivered. Blackwell's imprisonment hadn't ended threats. Networks survived individual losses. Money bought loyalty that transcended jail cells. War wasn't over, just relocated to different battlefield. Outside courthouse, after arraignment, media swarmed Victoria for statements about David's death, about Sentinel's destruction, about her husband's heroic documentation of treason. She handled questions with CEO competence, deflecting attention from Mac, protecting him from spotlight that would make future operations difficult. Mac slipped away through side entrance, Jake running interference, both men knowing media exposure was tactical. Vulnerability neither could afford. They regrouped at Morgan Tech's secure facility, where conversations couldn't be monitored, where planning could proceed without federal oversight. Victoria arrived 20 minutes later, exhausted but victorious. Prosecutors say David's evidence guarantees conviction. Blackwell's attorneys are already discussing plea deals, but Morrison says no deals. Full trial, full exposure, maximum sentence. Mac nodded satisfied but not celebrating. What about Blackwell's threat, information about Rebecca's death? Victoria's expression shifted, became more personal. She pulled out her phone, pulled up email from Morrison sent an hour ago. Morrison had cyber team trace those texts to you. They came from burner phone Blackwell purchased in Paris before arrest. But there's more, Mac. She handed him the phone. Mac read Morrison's detailed analysis, financial transactions buried in Blackwell's network, $50,000 to maintenance technician, who'd signed off on Rebecca's helicopter inspection, paid the day after her crash from offshore account, now traced to operation codenamed Rebecca's Wings. Mac's world narrowed to single point of focus. What is she telling me? Victoria's voice carried careful precision. New evidence suggests your wife's crash deserves fresh investigation. Evidence suggesting mechanical failure wasn't mechanical, wasn't failure, was an accident. Murder. Mac's voice came flat dead. Evidence is circumstantial but compelling. Victoria read from Morrison's email. Maintenance tech disappeared 3 days after Rebecca's crash. New identity, new country, money trail goes cold in Caymans. Classic pattern of paid asset being retired. Mac's hands clenched into fists, knuckles white with pressure that wanted release through violence. Rebecca's Wings. That was mentioned in trial failed operation to steal aviation technology. Exactly, Morrison thinks Rebecca became collateral damage in operation targeting technology she worked on. Someone needed that tech badly enough to remove obstacles. Your wife was obstacle. Who ordered it? Victoria's answer was frustratingly incomplete. Morrison doesn't know yet. Blackwell was peripheral player, not architect. Real mastermind, still unidentified, still operational, still dangerous. She met his eyes. Mac FBI's reopening investigation, but 5 years cold, dead witnesses, destroyed evidence, conviction will be difficult, even if they identify perpetrators. Mac's response came quiet, absolute. Then investigation continues. Hunt continues. Justice continues. Victoria's warning was explicit. Morrison said to tell you through legal channels only, not through channels that land you in cell next to Blackwell. Mac's agreement was tactical rather than sincere. Understood. But both knew what understood really meant. 2 months later, trial began on cold October morning, federal courthouse surrounded by protesters arguing both sides, media establishing satellite positions, security presence overwhelming. Mac attended every day, sitting behind prosecution table, making his presence known, ensuring Blackwell saw exactly who was watching, who was waiting, who would ensure justice arrived regardless of verdict. Prosecution built case methodically. David's documents. Lily's testimony via recorded deposition. Victoria's corporate records, mercenary confessions, FBI surveillance, financial transactions. Evidence piled up like snowfall in mountains, overwhelming, suffocating, irrefutable. Blackwell's defense tried attacking credibility, questioning chain of custody, suggesting Mac had manufactured evidence from grief and vengeance. But forensic analysis confirmed authenticity. Multiple sources corroborated independently, paper trail, extended back years before David's death. On day 12, prosecution rested. Defense presented perfunctory case focused on character witnesses, claiming Blackwell was devoted, father-respected businessman, philanthropist, who'd made mistakes under pressure. Jury looked unconvinced. On day 14, closing arguments painted contrasting pictures. Prosecution showing traitor, who sold national security for profit, defense, showing human who'd stumbled into situation beyond control. Jury deliberated 18 hours before returning, with verdict that felt inevitable, earned just. Guilty on all counts. Treason, kidnapping, conspiracy, weapons, trafficking, murder of David Morgan. Judge's sentence came 2 weeks later: life imprisonment without possibility of parole, federal supermax facility isolation designed for most dangerous criminals. Blackwell's empire dismantled his wealth, seized under asset forfeiture, his name synonymous with betrayal. Mac watched sentencing from Gallery Victoria beside him and felt closure arriving like dawn after a long night. Not perfect closure, Rebecca's death still mysterious, Blackwell's network still operational, despite his capture, threats still existing in shadows where money and ideology converged. But Sophie was safe. Lily was safe. Justice had arrived, delayed but definitive. Night before Sophie's birthday, Mac found her sitting in window seat overlooking city lights, stuffed rabbit, the one Victoria had given her at hospital, clutched against her chest. Not sleeping despite late hour. Processing the way children did when adults assumed they didn't understand. Shadow lay at her feet, chin resting on paws, dark eyes tracking between Sophie and Mac, with concern that transcended animal instinct. "Hey, baby girl." Mac sat beside her, careful not to crowd. "What's going on in that big brain?" Sophie was quiet for a long moment, fingers working through Rabbit's worn fur. When she spoke, her voice carried weight no 8-year-old should bear. "Daddy, are the bad people really gone?" Mac had promised Sophie. Honesty always had sworn after Rebecca's death that he'd never comfort with lies. That promise faced its hardest test now, balancing truth with reassurance, reality with childhood's need for safety. "Mr. Blackwell is locked away. He can't hurt anyone, not you, not Lily, not Miss Victoria. He'll be in prison for the rest of his life." Sophie processed this, her next question inevitable. "But there are other bad people, like the ones who tried to blow up Miss Victoria's building?" Mac's jaw tightened. He'd hoped Sophie didn't know about the evidence vault attack. But children heard more than adults realized, understood more than they revealed. His answer came careful, measured. "Yeah, sweetheart. Bad people will always exist. That's how the world works. Some people choose good, some choose bad." Sophie's eyes found his, Rebecca's gray-green, carrying wisdom beyond years. "And you stop the bad people, like you did before with the soldiers." "I protect the people I love. That's my job. Not soldier anymore, but protector. And I'm very good at it." Sophie leaned against him, small and warm and trusting, despite everything she'd survived. Shadow shifted closer, pressing against both of them, completing their small pack. "I was really scared, Daddy. When the man took me and Lily, I didn't know if you'd find us." Mac's arms wrapped around her, holding tight enough to anchor both of them. "I know you were scared. Being scared is okay. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing what needs doing anyway. Like you. Like both of us." Mac kissed the top of her head. "You were so brave, Sophie. Keeping Lily calm, trusting I'd come surviving until I got there. I'm so proud of you." Sophie was quiet, processing then. "Daddy, do you like Miss Victoria?" The subject change was pure 8-year-old logic, connecting dots adults tried to keep separated. Mac's answer was honest, gentle. "I do. She's strong, smart, brave, reminds me of Mommy in some ways." Shadow's tail thumped once against the floor as if approving. "Good." Sophie's voice was firm, decided. "Because Lily and I talked, and we think you should be friends. Maybe more than friends eventually, but we're not ready for that yet. We just want you to be happy." Mac's laugh came surprised, genuine. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm 8 now, almost 9. That's very mature." Sophie's grin was pure childhood trauma momentarily forgotten. "Can Shadow come to my birthday party tomorrow?" "Wouldn't be a party without him." Sophie yawned, comfortable, now safe in certainty that Daddy would protect her, that bad people were handled, that tomorrow would bring cake and presents and normalcy earned through survival. Mac carried her to bed, Shadow following close, taking his customary position across her doorway. Mac tucked her in, watched her fall asleep with steady breathing, modern medicine and father's presence both ensured. Tomorrow they'd celebrate. Tonight he'd stand guard against nightmares both remembered and potential. Some victories were measured in children sleeping peacefully. Tonight, that was enough. 2 months later, Sophie's 9th birthday party filled Victoria's backyard with children's laughter and games and normalcy that felt earned rather than assumed. Lily played with Sophie like sisters separated at birth, bond, forged in shared trauma, transforming into foundation for lifelong friendship. Shadow ranged the yard's perimeter with purpose that retirement couldn't fully erase. The German Shepherd checked fence lines, identified guests, positioned himself between children and strangers with instinct deeper than training. His ears swiveled independently, tracking sounds, movements, potential threats that didn't exist but might someday. Sophie called to him, voice bright with birthday joy. Shadow, come get cake. The dog trotted over, then accepted Sophie's hug with patient tolerance, then returned to patrol. Some duties transcended celebration. Mac manned the grill with Jake, flipping burgers, watching children play, feeling contentment that had seemed impossible 6 months ago. Victoria appeared beside him, watching Shadow work with fascination. He never stops, does he? Victoria observed. Retired military working dogs don't stop. They just redirect. Mac flipped burgers with practiced efficiency. Shadow kept Sophie alive through asthma attacks. I slept through strangers. I didn't see dangers I couldn't predict. Best decision I made was accepting him. Victoria's voice came thoughtful. David wanted a dog like that. Said every family needed guardian who never slept, never questioned, never failed. She paused. Maybe Lily needs that kind of protection too. Mac met her eyes, understanding the question beneath suggestion. Maybe she does. Maybe we all do. Shadow's bark interrupted, alert but not aggressive. Unknown car in driveway, Victoria's mother arriving with more guests. The dog assessed, recognized authorized visitors, relaxed fractionally. Jake laughed from his position beside grill. That dog's better security system than anything you've installed at Morgan Tech. Mac couldn't argue. Shadow was family guardian, early warning system wrapped in fur and loyalty. Some investments paid dividends impossible to measure. Victoria stood close, shoulder brushing Mac's comfortable proximity that had developed over months working together, rebuilding security, processing trauma, finding partnership that transcended professional boundaries without crossing personal ones yet. Her voice came quiet beneath party noise. Trial starts next week. Morrison says we should prepare for media circus for Blackwell's attorneys attacking David's character for ugliness before justice. Mac flipped burgers with practiced efficiency. Let them attack. Evidence speaks louder than rhetoric. Victoria's hand found his arm, gentle pressure conveying gratitude mixed with something deeper, something neither had fully acknowledged. I couldn't have survived this without you, without knowing someone understood what David's sacrifice, what tonight's victory cost. Mac met her eyes. Saw a woman who transformed from dismissive CEO to trusted partner. Saw strength wrapped in vulnerability. Saw future possibility. Neither was quite ready to explore, but both recognized existed. David saved my life in Kandahar. Protecting his family was smallest repayment I could offer. Victoria's response carried weight of words carefully chosen. You've repaid that debt 10 times over, Mac. What comes next isn't obligation. It's choice. The moment stretched, filled with unspoken potential, with slow burn attraction, months in building with recognition that healing sometimes meant opening to connection rather than hiding in protective isolation. Sophie's voice shattered the moment with perfect timing. Daddy, come play tag, you're it. Mac grinned, squeezed Victoria's hand briefly, then jogged toward children who'd survived nightmare and emerged stronger, braver, more resilient than adults who tried protecting them. He played tag until breathless, until children collapsed, laughing on grass until sun descended toward mountains, and parents started collecting offspring for bedtime routines. As party wound down, as guests departed with thank yous and promises to reconnect, Mac found himself alone with Victoria on her back porch, watching fireflies emerge from twilight. Shadow settled at their feet, finally allowing himself to rest now that perimeter was secure, threats were neutralized, Pack was safe. Victoria spoke first, voice carrying certainty that came from months of careful consideration. I'm not ready for romance, not yet. Too soon after David, too complicated, with Sophie and Lily watching too many variables. Mac nodded, understanding completely. Agreed. Victoria continued softer now. But I'm not ruling it out either. When trial concludes, when Blackwell's sentenced, when life stabilizes into whatever new normal looks like, maybe then we revisit this conversation. Mac's answer was honest, patient, the responsive man who'd learned timing mattered more than urgency. I'll be here whenever you're ready, however this develops. Victoria's smile carried relief and promise equally. Thank you for understanding, for not rushing, for being exactly who Sophie needs, who Lily needs, who I need right now. They stood in comfortable silence, watching darkness claim landscape, both understanding that healing proceeded at its own pace, that connection built slowly was connection built to last. That patience was its own form of courage. Shadow's soft snore broke the quiet, the dog finally surrendering to exhaustion, trusting that his humans would maintain watch while he rested. Mac's phone buzzed, breaking moment, with timing that seemed cosmically designed to prevent conversations from reaching conclusions. He checked display Morrison after hours, which meant either emergency or breakthrough. He answered, "Morrison, what have you got?" Her voice carried excitement mixed with caution. "Blackwell's trying to deal again, offering information about larger network in exchange for reduced sentence. Prosecutors are interested, but want verification before committing." Mac processed implications rapidly. "What kind of information?" Morrison's answer opened new chapter in Hunt that would never truly end. Names of buyers David documented but couldn't identify. Connections to hostile intelligence services, terrorist organizations, rogue states. Blackwell claims he can dismantle entire network if we give him protective custody in 20 years instead of life. Mac looked at Victoria, saw her listening, saw understanding dawning. "He's trying to buy his way out using other people's crimes," Morrison confirmed. "Exactly. Question is, do we take the deal? Catch bigger fish by letting smaller ones swim, or do we ensure Blackwell pays full price regardless of intelligence value?" Mac's answer came without hesitation, without calculation, driven by principle rather than pragmatism. Blackwell threatened children, killed David Morgan, sold weapons to enemies. Some prices can't be negotiated, Morrison. Some debts get paid in full. Morrison's sigh carried weight of someone who agreed personally but understood systemic pressures. "I'll recommend against the deal. But there's something else, Mac. Something the investigation uncovered that you need to hear." Mac's tactical instincts screamed warning. "What?" Morrison's voice carried careful precision he'd learned to recognize as prelude to difficult truth. "Financial transactions we found in Blackwell's network, $50,000 to maintenance technician who signed off on Rebecca's helicopter inspection. Paid day after her crash from offshore account, and we've now traced to operation codenamed Rebecca's Wings." The world narrowed. Victoria's hand found his, anchoring him to present when past threatened to drown him. "New evidence suggests your wife's crash deserves fresh investigation," Morrison continued. "Evidence suggesting mechanical failure wasn't mechanical, wasn't failure, wasn't accident. Murder." Mac's voice came flat, emotionless, the tone that preceded violence. "Evidence is circumstantial but compelling. That maintenance tech disappeared 3 days after Rebecca's crash. New identity, new country money trail that goes cold in the Caymans. Classic pattern of paid asset being retired." Morrison paused, giving him time to process. "Mac FBI's reopening investigation, but 5 years cold dead witnesses, destroyed evidence. Conviction will be difficult even if we identify perpetrators." Mac's response came quiet, absolute promise wrapped in certainty. "Then investigation continues. Hunt continues. Justice continues." Morrison's warning was explicit. "Through legal channels, Mac, not through channels that land you in cell next to Blackwell." Mac's agreement was tactical rather than sincere. "Understood." But both knew what understood really meant. After hanging up, Mac sat in darkness, processing reality he'd hoped to avoid. Legal system might fail. Justice might become negotiation. And Rebecca's killers, the ones who'd stolen Sophie's mother, who'd left his daughter without the woman who would have taught her things, Mac couldn't walk free, probably running new operations, targeting new families, profiting from theft and murder. Victoria's voice cut through his spiraling. "Whatever you need, whatever it takes. I'm with you." Mac turned, studied her in moonlight, saw partnership that had transformed from professional to personal to something deeper, something forged in shared trauma and mutual respect. "That's dangerous territory, Victoria. Line between justice and revenge gets blurry when emotions drive decisions." Victoria's smile carried steel beneath sadness. "David taught me that some lines exist to be crossed when staying safe means abandoning principles. He crossed lines trying to protect Sentinel. You cross lines protecting our daughters. If Blackwell walks, if Rebecca's killers remain free, I'll cross whatever lines necessary to ensure they answer for what they've taken. Mac recognized determination that matched his own, recognized warrior hiding beneath CEO exterior, recognized partner who'd stand beside him regardless of consequences. Let's see how system works first. Maybe it surprises us. Shadow stirred at their feet, lifting his head, ears swiveling toward distant sound only he could hear. The dog's vigilance never truly ended, even in moments of peace. Always watching, always ready, always protecting. Like Mac. Like the life he'd chosen when civilian normalcy proved impossible to maintain. That evening, after Victoria departed with promises to reconvene tomorrow, after Sophie was asleep and Shadow had completed his final perimeter check, Mac opened Rebecca's old files one more time. The investigation reports he'd memorized. The maintenance logs that showed inspection 2 days before crash. The technician who disappeared. All the pieces were there. Had been there for 5 years, waiting for someone to connect them properly. Blackwell's revelation wasn't revelation at all. It was confirmation of truth Mac had suspected, but couldn't prove, couldn't act on, couldn't avenge without crossing lines that separated warrior from criminal. Now those lines seemed less absolute, less clear, less important than justice for women who'd given him Sophie, who'd deserved to watch their daughter grow, who'd been murdered as collateral damage in corporate greed. Mac made decision then, sitting in darkness while daughter breathed steady in nearby bedroom, while dog stood guard in doorway, while future stretched toward hunt that would define whatever came next. He would wait, would watch, would see if legal system delivered justice for Rebecca like it had for David. And if system failed, if Rebecca's killers remained untouchable, if evidence proved insufficient, if bureaucracy protected guilty, then Mac would ensure justice arrived through other channels. Some debts were paid in courtrooms. Others were paid in darkness where law didn't reach, but warriors did. Mac was patient. Mac was prepared. Mac was exactly what Rebecca's killers should fear most. Someone with nothing left to lose, except daughter he'd protect by eliminating threats before they materialized. The hunt was just beginning. Shadow's soft woof from Sophie's doorway brought Mac back to present. The dog's eyes glowed in darkness, reflecting ambient light, watching Mac with understanding that transcended species. Shadow knew what protective duty meant, knew what lines could be crossed to ensure pack survival. Mac stood, moved to Sophie's room, stood beside Shadow, watching his daughter sleep. This was why. This small, life-breathing, steady dreaming, safe dreams, because her father made worlds safe enough to dream. Rebecca's justice would come. Blackwell's network would burn. Threats would be eliminated. But tonight, Sophie slept peacefully. Tonight, that was enough. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new calculations, new choices between law and justice, between system and survival, between waiting for protection and becoming protection. Mac had made his choice long ago in mountains and deserts, where civilized rules didn't apply, where survival meant decisive action, where hesitation meant death. He was Reaper, retired but not reformed, peaceful but not pacified, patient but not passive. And Rebecca's killers, whoever they were, wherever they hid, had 3 years head start, but nowhere left to run. The hunt would continue. Justice would arrive. Some debts transcended legal systems and demanded payment in ways courts couldn't provide. Max Sullivan was debt collector, and collection was just beginning.